I'm excited because what was supposed to be an intergenerational challenge for the village, and that's anybody who works with a teen, loves a teen, or leads a teen. I found that the feedback, a lot of people were saying that the information has been helpful for not just them personally, but also professionally, and that's a good sign. So, listen, tonight's topic is one of my favorites to teach because I I had to learn how to have difficult conversations very early because some of the poor decisions that I made, I had to learn to self-advocate. And so I've become an advocate of teaching other people to do the same. And I chose this as the final topic of the challenge because sometimes I meet teens and they say things like, I can't talk to my, or I would never tell them anything. Or I meet parents who say, I don't know how in the world I'm going to break this down. I had one parent who had a non binary student, and this the child never expressed that to the parent, and the parent didn't know how to have those conversations with their child. So I became the intermediary, and I found that to be interesting. It was a interesting dynamic to mediate. However, what it showed me was that while I think that communicating in conflict might be something of ease, it was an opportunity to teach more families, and so that's essentially why I added in this topic for discussion. So, really quickly, if you are here and you happen to catch the challenge live, I want you to share what has been your biggest takeaway over the past 4 days. We've talked about utilizing time, organizing it. We talked about establishing your boundaries. What happens when we don't establish those boundaries? The benefits of establishing those. We also talked about programming the mind, how things travel from your conscious state to your subconscious state, how that impacts you. So, what has been your biggest takeaway? You can drop that in the comments. Um, and then I'm going to continue on and jump right in. Don't forget our challenge. There are several keywords that I've been mentioning for the past 4 days. If you get all of them right, you are a prize winner. I will be mailing the prize to your house this week. So I have a few keywords that I'll share today, and then I'll send out an email requesting for the first responder of those keywords, and then you will essentially be the prize winner. Okay, so let's just jump on in. A difficult conversation is any topic that you feel is challenging to discuss. So it doesn't matter how small it is, doesn't matter how big it is. We define a difficult conversation as something like, I really am apprehensive about sharing that. That's off the table. That is not comfortable. I have no interest in doing that. And I feel like when we are better at having difficult conversations, we actually get the things that we need. We get the love that we feel like we need. We get to express our need for love, our love language, any needs that we have in platonic relationships as well. If we need time, if we need support, when we learn to have those difficult conversations, we position ourselves to get more of what we need. And in relation to that, we get what we want. I don't know about you, but it's a powerful feeling to ask and actually receive the things that you desire. And some of this is relative to like showing up at work. Some of it is relative to showing up at home. I remember what it was like to negotiate my salary as an adult. I did it before when I was young, but when I did it as an adult, that's a different dynamic. And the feeling of being like empowered enough to make the acts. No one wants to make the acts. That's a common feeling. So when we get comfortable having difficult conversations, we get more of what we want. We also avoid storing our feelings and emotions in our body. And I don't know if you know what that feels like. This is something that I teach on. But when you have stress stored in your body, you have pain. You have aches in your body. I get them at my shoulders. Some people would describe it as getting it in like the pit of their stomach. Some people have like pains in their back. It just shows up differently. Some people have like skin reactions. Some people have like a different, their menstrual cycle is imbalanced, their diet change, weight gain. Those are like direct, sometimes uh byproducts of us storing away our feelings, not getting them out. They're like literally sitting inside of our body and to some degree poisoning us. And then when we get better at having difficult conversations, we improve our relationships because we develop a level of intimacy. Conflict is healthy because it allows us, and we're going to talk about this today, it allows us to gain insight on how a person feels. It is when we are handling or managing the conflict in a healthy way that that's developed. So when we're not having healthy conflict, which is basically when both persons is like this, trying to get their point across, then relationships are sometimes, the opposite of improved. They're damaged. No one wants to feel like they're not being heard. No one wants to feel like they're not being understood. That's usually what gets an individual to shut down. And so when we learn to have difficult conversations, it improves our relationships because it's a more intimate insight into a person's feelings. And then also that creates, as a byproduct of that, it creates some trust, some vulnerability. Your guards are down, and just by the nature of human nature, we all want to feel accepted. Like that's the basic level of hierarchy of need of human being. We need to feel accepted. And we get that first at home from our parents. And then when we leave our homes, external of that in our own relationships we form, that becomes a need again in our own households and families. And so, when we get better at having difficult conversations, that improves our relationships. When we avoid having difficult conversations, we are making compounded assumptions. So, for over a period of time, we start to develop narratives in our own head about how the person is feeling, what they think about what you think, what they did not do because of what you said, how they're feeling right now. Those are all drawn assumptions because we never talk to them. And so over time, those assumptions become compounded. And I don't know about you, but eventually, you get to the point where you start building up this frustration in the inside because there's a gap in relationship, there's a gap in communication. And only thing that can change that is actually like talking it out or severing ties. But sometimes, not sometimes, my first line of defense is always let's just have that hard conversation. So that is definitely one of the side effects, I guess, of not having it. Another one is we rob the other person of sharing their story. So when we say, you know what, I don't want to talk to them about it, we ain't got nothing to talk about, you never get a chance to hear, well, how do they feel? What was the reason they felt it happened? Why do they think we may be at the place that we're in? You never get to hear it. So it's almost like, you know what, I don't even want to hear it. Like a different, like a little bit of a pompous positioning, if you ask me. So we don't want to rob people of the opportunity to share their story, even if we don't believe them. And even if we don't think that they're right, we still want to open that door for them to share. And I was inspired by this or learning about this when I first read this book back in 2015. How to Have Difficult Conversations totally changed the game. Let me tell you, honey, I don't run from any difficult conversation. The last difficult conversation I had was with my pastor, and it was about leaving my home church that I've been at 10 years. I couldn't wait to have the conversation. I came in smiling like, Bishop, I just want to let you know that in Easter Sunday is my last Sunday. And I love you for what you've helped me to grow, how you've helped me to grow spiritually, but it's time. It was easy for me. It was easy for me to get out how I felt. It was easy I wanted to talk to him. Now, that's a hard conversation. You serve somewhere, you've been working somewhere for a long period of time, you love it there. I love my church family. I loved my church. But it was time. I couldn't wait to have a conversation. I am like that now. I cannot wait. And it's not like I can't wait because I'm going to tell them what I got to say. That's not even my position. It's like I can't wait because I just want to express how I'm feeling and I want to give them a chance to share maybe how that makes them feel. So I love it. So I don't be running from ain't nothing too hard. Nothing is too difficult for me. So in this book by Douglas Stone, he talks about there are 3 conversations that are happening when conflict occurs. Conflict is simply you have a perspective and someone else has a different perspective. So sometimes that conflict looks like well, depending on the amicability of the relationship, it may look like laughter, like, I cannot believe you said that. That's crazy. Sometimes it looks like judgment, like, that is not right. You're wrong. Sometimes conflict looks like that. Sometimes it looks like rejection, like someone not understanding you, or you feeling like an outcast to someone else's opinion. So it affects us in different ways, the conflict. And so there are three conversations happening from each person. So let's use me. I'm Linda, and I'm having a conversation with Ben. Three conversations are happening with Linda. Three conversations are happening with Ben in their minds. That's six conversations happening at the same time. So the authors of this book did a research, and they discovered that the commonalities of those conversations were this. Three types of conversations. Here they are. The first one is like the what happened. Me and Ben are thinking about, like, we each have our own perception and feeling about what happened. I feel like Ben drove my car, emptied out the gas, and brought it back empty. And I just feel like that's trifling. Ben might say, I was rushing. I had a meeting that I could not be late for. I knew Lynn had extra time, so I did bring the car back with the intent to fill it up when Lynn returned home. The thing about this conversation is there's intent and then there's the impact. So we sometimes, when we're in a conflict, we assume the role of a victim. I assume Ben knew, he know I don't play about my gas. So why did he do that? I assume that Ben intentionally left my gas empty. Well, Ben assumes, like, well, I know that maybe Lynn is like easygoing and it won't be a big deal. So I will fill it up when she gets home. If I never had the conversation with Ben, I would be feeling like Ben is trifling. Why didn't he? Never even knowing that the back end of his story was he didn't get to it, but he would. So while his intentions were pure, how it impacted me made me feel like I was like Ben doesn't care, like I'm not priority, like I'm not being cared for. I'm drawing all of those compounded assumptions. And I never even had the conversation with Ben. So this, like the what happened conversation, is critical because you want to hear the other person's side of the story. How you start that conversation might be, hey, like, Ben, I noticed that when I got in the car this morning, it didn't have any gas. Not, I don't know why I ain't got no gas in my car, because when I gave it to you, it was gas in there. That's what I really want to say. But after I learned this, it challenged me to have different language. So when I say, hey, I noticed that the gas was low when I got in the car this morning, I am not saying you did it. I'm not saying to Ben, you trifling. Why it's not in there? You don't care about me. I'm just saying, stating an observation. That gives Ben, with no feeling of like defense, his guard should be down because I did not blame him, finger point. I did not label him as trifling, negligent. I just said, hey, I noticed. Now, depending on Ben's maturity, if he's mature, he would go into like what happened. Like, oh, I was meaning to, but when you get back home, I will make sure I do it. If Ben ain't too mature, he might say, yeah, that might be the end of it. So it does depend on the response of the person. But hey, that is one that we can't control. We can only control our part of the difficult conversation, which is always to get understanding before passing judgment, before making assumptions, before going to 0 to 100 real quick. Our job is to understand, like, let me hear what the other person says, what happened. So that's the first conversation. So both people are having it. Ben could alternatively be like, dag, I know Lynn probably think I'm trifling. Now I'm gonna have to cook dinner tonight because I definitely dropped the ball when I didn't get gas. That might be a feeling of guilt that he might be internalizing, and it may show up in another way. So when we talk about those things, we eliminate all of that guessing. So that's the first one, the what happened conversation. The second conversation that's happening is the feelings. Like, each person has a set of feelings that are occurring, whether they outwardly express it or not. Some of us may not have developed a level of emotional maturity where we are skilled in maybe expressing our emotions with words. Just by the nature of most people that I meet, their upbringing, having a conversation about emotions and how you feel using language that is not doesn't make the other person feel offended, that is not something that is commonly practiced. I can't speak for you, but I will say for me, I didn't learn how to have any of these positive, healthy conversations as a child. In fact, I learned, how do I put this? I learned what I did not want to recycle. I feel that's probably why I'm really passionate about this, because I know what I learned was not healthy. So I feel like I really want to unlearn that and teach other people. I do think that's a big part of my why. Language is, I am very sensitive when it comes to words, and this it is due to my childhood, but how I talk to people and I am, I don't like when language is used loosely. So that's actually how I got really good, and probably why I'm really curious about having these kinds of conversations. But that's not everyone's story. Someone could have experienced through their childhood maybe the repetition of having unhealthy dialogue or unhealthy expression of emotions, and that's normal to them. That level of like dysfunction is normal. So when you approach them in a more healthy way, that's almost like, what's wrong with you? You're doing too much. Like, you don't need to do all of that. Just say how you feel. But what they're saying is, I'm not accustomed to even processing that way. And honestly, that's uncomfortable. But I never want to be, I'm never going to be the person that's like, okay, and someone else is being comfortable in their dysfunction, because I ain't comfortable in that. So the feeling conversation. So one person has their feelings about what happened, and the other person has the feelings about what they happened. And sometimes the feelings aren't the same. What if one person is less emotional than the other? They might not even have a feeling. And sometimes that makes the person who does have feelings feel really like, well, then you really don't care. If you are the emotional person in the scenario, and then you have a person who's maybe not so emotional or as expressive, when the emotional person feels like the maybe not so expressive person is not responding, that feels like rejection. It feels like you don't love or care, or how I feel is not important to you. That's literally how it feels. And for the person who maybe is not so expressive, or not so expressive, and not maybe so um like open and sharing their emotions, they may feel like you are tripping. And so when we know the upkeep of the person, like if you have real relationships, you know if a person is like, okay, I got some friends who are very in tune with their emotions and maybe sensitive, and I have some friends who are not so much. I know them. So when I run into conflict, I have to think like, okay, well, I know that they may be. Without, in the instances when you don't have that understanding, you ask. So when a conflict arises, you know, I would normally say something like, matter of fact, I'm gonna give you a real example. A good friend of mine, we do this project together. Um, and the project, uh, I'm trying to tell you without telling you. We'll have to end the project soon because my friend no longer lives here in the States, and it's just a little complex. I noticed that the friend has not been responsive, and it's a project related to money. And so my friend moved to like the other side of the country and notified me by way of text message. Mind you, we have an ongoing project. And I was immediately like taken aback. I felt like a mild sense of abandonment, in a sense, like, hey, we got a whole thing going on. I know you were planning to move, but the text message literally said, I just left 2 hours ago. No, I just want to let you know I left 2 hours ago. I never got to see them, hug them, pray for them. That hurt my feelings. So when I first read the text message, I was already at 100 in the inside. Like my heart was racing. You know how steam start coming out your ears? Because I was upset. Now, I've gotten to the point where I can not immediately control how my body's responding to stress or emotion, but I'm immediately self-aware. So I didn't respond to the message because I was at the height of my subconscious mind. See, this is when compounding learning kicks in. We talked about this, how when you're upset, angry, any emotion that is not in a healthy state, you are operating automatically from your subconscious mind. It is very difficult to be conscious in a state of any of the things that I described, any kind of discontentment. It's really difficult to be conscious. So that's why people say, wait, let yourself cool down. So that's what I did. So when I woke up the next morning, I felt ready. And I literally said, like, hey, when I got your message, it made me feel like maybe I care more about our friendship than you did. This is me sharing my emotion. I never said, I could have said, the old me would have been like, that's messed up how you just gonna leave in the midst of what we working on. That, like, so you don't care no more? That's the old me. But the new me was like, hey, it made me feel like, maybe I care more about our friendship. And I said, I do understand that things happen, but I would have really loved to hug you, to pray for you. I really meant that. And so I wanted to know, well, how did she feel? Was she like scared? I mean, she's going to the opposite side of the country. She don't know nobody. Did it happen quickly? Did it happen like, is she panicking? Those are things that I don't know. So before I made conclusions, that was me opening the door to have a difficult conversation. And she responded back and said, hey, I am so sorry. I'll have a chance to explain, but I do care about you. I honor our friendship and I love you so much. That was enough to hold me over so I wouldn't be in my feelings all day. But do you see how that could have quickly escalated? Like, well, you know what? I don't care no more. You don't care? I don't care. That's exactly what we go into. Like when we have a difficult conversation, we don't take into account the other person's feelings. We're literally saying, in this instance, only my feelings matter. Your feelings are invalid. But the distinction between healthy conflict is your feelings are valid and their feelings are valid too. So that's the second conversation that's happening, the feelings conversation. The third one is the identity conversation. This is again based on research. So in this conversation, both me and Ben, I'm saying, well, am I going to be petty if I call Ben and tell him he should put gas in my car? Am I being like, am I asking for too much if I expect that of him? Like having that thought in my mind, this is what typically makes people like not want to have the conversation because they're thinking about how that makes them look. So Ben might be saying, am I trifling because I didn't do that? Or dad, maybe I'm really not a good partner because I can never get anything right. So each person is having their own identity crisis in the middle of a conflict. If you make this into a parent-child relationship, the parent might be saying, am I, okay, the child might be saying as a result of the conflict, Dad, I could never like get anything right. If I say this or if I express how I feel, that might make me out to be the bad child. Or uh I might not be able to like have a closer relationship. Or uh I might not be like what's the word I'm looking for? Like I might not be like I may not even be like, I don't want to say the favorite because these are words I try not to use because they're common but they're not healthy. Okay, let me come back to that. The dad or the mom might feel like, am I being too harsh? Am I being an anal parent? Am I being overbearing? This makes me look overbearing. Does this make me look like, is this abusive? Or you might even be saying, am I not doing enough by not saying anything? Am I being too like lenient? Does that make me a sucker? Oh, I'm a sucker now? Like inside you having those thoughts. So as you can see, like that's a lot of complexities and a lot of assumptions happening all at the same time. So by having the conversation, a difficult conversation, the goal is that both of those narratives, for the three narratives from Ben, the three narratives from Lynn, that the goal is that when we come to the table to have a hard conversation, our goal is to learn. And I'll show you what that means. I'll walk you through an acronym for learn. So each of those letters represent an action step that you take when you're having a difficult conversation. And for any conversation, it does not matter what it's about, who is talking. Before I jump into that, I do want to say that as a result of doing the Grow and Grind Challenge, I am, and this is a commercial break, I am releasing my Grow and Grind Boot Camp. So that's an extension of what we've been learning, the personal development exercises, but it's in a more of a, how do I put this? The last 4 days have been like a mini masterclass. They're brief. They're designed to only be 30 minutes. Today is going to be a little longer because this topic is a little bit more complex. But in the boot camp, this is intensive where we're actually doing the work and we're doing it amongst families. So it's for 6 weeks. It starts June 1st. Really quickly, I just want to go over what's included. It's going to take me 5 minutes. So on the first week, we do an assessment, and that's an assessment of your own self-concept. It's literally an assessment, your interests, and then your level of confidence and self-awareness from where you are at the point at your starting point of starting the program. And then we identify the behaviors that are necessary for you to see the areas of improvement that you're seeking. The thing about the boot camp is that I'm doing it 2 for 1. I want a parent to come with like the other parent, or a spouse to come with the other spouse, or a teen to come with a parent, 2 for 1. So for the price of one, 2 people can come. On the second week, we talk about the implementation of affirmations. In our Programming the Mind session, I talk to you about affirmations do not work unless your brain has an emotional connection to the words that are being said. So that connection only happens when affirmations are used in an effective way. So we talk about, or we'll teach you how to develop those affirmations that are specific to your needs so that you can address those self-sabotaging thoughts that you've been having, because we all have them. And then on the third week, we talk about managing stress and anxiety. And we do that by way of teaching sensory. So you'll receive a wellness kit. It'll be mailed to your home. And inside of it, there are 5 different products, and they each address your 5 senses. And it's through that practice that we're teaching you to manage your emotions and stress. I love teaching teens this because the more mature we can get them to manage their emotions, the less likely they are to develop codependent relationships, to have or display other unhealthy behaviors, other unhealthy coping behaviors like promiscuity, like drugs, like alcohol, violence. So we give them an outlet to manage those emotions while they're young. And so parents benefit from this too, but both of you will receive a kit to your home. On the fourth week, we talk about building your support tribe, because what really, well, I would say, what they say, the real flex is developing and sustaining relationships that are outside of your nuclear family. It is through the connection of people that we go far. And so, like, expanding your territory, what that looks like, how to open up, how to develop those relationships, who you should like reach out to. I love talking about building tribe. This is good for teens. And remember, the teen and the parent, or both parents, will be learning this together. So it's 2 for 1. On the fifth week, we talk about strengthening communication. So you get to invite, in addition to the one person who's in the class with you, one more person to join a blended session. And it will be co-facilitated. So I won't be the only one. We'll be doing breakout sessions. And so we're going to get to the bottom of some of these narratives and difficult conversations. And by this stage, we'd have somewhat of an understanding of your nuclear family and maybe some of the dynamics that may be challenging. And so while we won't come in there and be like, man, we heard that we won't do that. But my co-facilitator and I will do our best to make sure that the areas of concern are addressed in a very tactful way and a healthy way, so that communication can be strengthened. And then on the final week, everyone always asks, how do you go after that big, scary, bold thing? And one of the things I really love to teach is how to break down big, lofty goals into very segmentable action steps. And so that's what we'll be doing on week 6. And again, that's for the parent and the child. The boot camp starts June 1st. So here's what's included. Every topic that I just shared with you, we would meet weekly. We would have 6 sessions as a group. There's 1 session that you would have with me one-on-one. So that's one-on-one with, if you come as a parent and a child, each of you have a separate session. You also get a wellness kit mailed to your home. There are activities and worksheets that you'll get to your email. We send bi-weekly inspirational messages to keep the momentum going, to keep you like connected to the boot camp. And then the investment for participating in the boot camp is $20. $900. And that's 2 for 1. And if you register before June 1st, we'll take that $900 off. That will make it $2,000. We do have a financing partner, so you don't even have to pay it all at once. And you can make installments at your leisure. So if you're interested in that, you'll just shoot me an email and I will make sure I get it to you. And you'll see more promo about the boot camp on social media. We'll launch promo after we finish the challenge. So you have until June 1st. And again, only 10 families are invited into the boot camp. Okay, so that's my commercial. I'm finished with that. Let's jump into the acronym learn. Let's jump into the acronym learn. We learned what makes a difficult conversation, what happens when we avoid the difficult conversation, how we are maybe made better as a result of having the conversation. So let me give you the tools so that you can begin to have the conversations using this acronym learn. So the first L, the first letter L, is to learn the other person's story. Whenever we go into a difficult conversation, the objective is not to share how we feel. It is not to express our feelings at the time. It is to really learn the story of the other person. I promise you, if you take this perspective, it immediately disarms the other person from being defensive. It doesn't matter how many times you've been arguing. If you take the approach, and how you say these things matter. The element of the environment matters too. The mood of the person, you got to take all of that into consideration. A person being tired, fatigued, remember what we learned about the mind. 80% of the time, 86% of the time, we are operating from our subconscious. So if you're sleep deprived, hangry, angry, upset, disgruntled, anxious, that is not the time to have a conscious conversation. You want the person to be in their conscious state of mind, just like you would be in your conscious state of mind when you are initiating the conversation. So think of this. I try to teach my sister this because she does not have any level of self-awareness when it comes to talking. I'm like, sis, I am not. Do you see me right now? Do I look like I'm listening? So a person has to be like, meet them where they are. If they're not ready to have the conversation, or you feel like you don't know what their state is, ask them, hey, I would love to share. I don't like the words we need to talk, or I need to talk to you. That alone, those words are triggering like a mug. So find another language like, I would love to share something with you when you get a chance. When will you be free? What time would you be free today for me to share something with you? That don't mean like I'm in trouble or anything. So you have to find a language that would not alarm the other person. When somebody tell me I need to talk to you, unless it's somebody like, I don't know, somebody like that I don't really have an emotional thing with, that don't make me feel no kind of way. But it does sound transactional. Like, I need to get this off of me and I need to share it with you. That don't feel good either, because I don't want to be no like recipient of all of your stuff you start dumping on me. So you got to find the language. But your job is to learn their story, is my whole point. So you go into the conversation, you know what? I just want to have an understanding about how you feel. I noticed that what I've noticed is some change in your behavior. I just want to see, like, where your head is. So depending on the maturity of the person, you might have to feed them questions if they're not like fluid in expressing their feelings. And I would urge you not to be frustrated about that, because again, not everybody is fluid in the expression of their emotions, because this is not common for somebody to even want to know their story. It's common for people to bottle up how they feel. So when you come into the table like, hey, I actually really genuinely want to know. I want to know how you feel. I want to know what you're thinking. I want to know, like, do you feel like, that's new territory. So this takes time for the other person to actually become adjusted to, until it's your norm. So the first L is learn their story. The E is I want you to eliminate any assumptions. When you start to say, I know they probably is your first sign. That's the first red flag, you assuming. You want to be certain. So if you find yourself saying like, I bet I don't even know if then that's your sign that you don't have clarity, and your job is to get clarity so that you're not assuming. So when you go into the conversation, you want to learn how they feel. You want to make sure that you are not making assumptions. You can say that I don't want to assume I understand how you feel, but I really want to understand how you feel. So I just want to I want to give you a chance to kind of share it if that's something you want to talk about right now. Give them a chance to say no too and have them come back because they're human. A is I want you to accept perspectives. You are two different beings. When you're having conflict with somebody, literally, conflict is just a different perspective. You do not have to agree to what they feel. You don't even have to agree if they're right. You could even think that they're still wrong and still have an exception, which is just me affirming that your point of view is valid. Because, contrary to that, when we don't accept that people have different opinions, which is a toxic behavior, by the way, we're basically saying how you feel is invalid. That's an invalid emotion. You shouldn't feel like that. Versus, I definitely get how you could feel that way. I don't necessarily agree, but I do understand. That's you accepting that your perspectives are different, and that is okay. It's okay for you all to have different perspectives. I don't know about you, but somebody keep agreeing with me and thinking like me, I'm gonna be like, do you got your own mind? Eventually. So it's okay. This is again healthy conflict. And then R, resist the urge to control their reaction. We cannot control other people. So if we're avoiding difficult conversations because we fear they'll be explosive, we fear it will hurt their feelings, we fear they will be rejected or reject us and how we feel, we cannot control them. What happens when we don't share how we feel? We are storing that in our bodies. That is literally a sign that you want to control or you have the urge to control the other person and their response. We can't do that. All we can do is love ourselves by releasing those emotions in a healthy way. So resisting the urge to control how things going to pan out and turn out, you have to learn how to do that. And then the N is neutralizing the conflict. So triggering words, starting off a conversation, that's not going to be a good, difficult conversation. What I'm gonna tell you, what I'm about to tell you right now, that uh, I need to talk to you right now. What we gonna do right now is neutralizing conflict means like both persons are arriving at the table with a clear, level head and coming from a place of like, I really want understanding. There's a different level of compassion and a different level of patience that has to be like present when you're neutralizing conflict. So that should be your goal. Whenever you're dealing with planning to have a difficult conversation, this LEARN acronym, this has to be the goal. Anything outside of that, you run the risk of making another person feel like you're attacking them, like you are misunderstanding them, like you are rejecting them, like you are I'm trying to think of some more. You get the point. It doesn't feel good. So when we initiate difficult conversation, we have to think with the other person in mind. And I don't know about y'all, but if you can apply these things, you can talk about anything. Anything. I can give you so many more difficult conversations that I've had. Let me just give you one more. I could tell you one more that I had, and then I'll let you guys go. I had another conversation with the leader. I was a part of this organization. It was a female leader. I never said I wanted to be in the role that I was placed in, but I did the work anyway. But I realized that I felt used, actually. I'm like, I ain't signed up for this. You didn't ask me. I'm the kind of person I'm going to jump in and I'm going to do the work. But after I sat and thought about it, I'm like, this is a lot. So I called the person. Now, this person is high up on the chain. Most people would be like, I don't know if I really want to tell her that because I really don't want her to feel like, because, she might be really busy. I don't know if she would, no. I just call her. Ring, 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 ring. She picked up the phone. I was like, let's just call her Abby. I was like, hey, Abby. And I got straight to the point. I'm calling you because I really want to kind of talk about the role that I'm in such and such. And Abby was like, okay, go ahead. And I said, well, I just want to bring to your attention that I'm serving in the capacity that I actually don't have the capacity to do. I know that you've appointed me because you know I'm quite competent. And while I appreciate that, I just don't have the time. I don't have the time. You know what Abby said? So, I'm glad that you called me and said that because most people don't. They just don't come back. They start to dwindle off. They don't have the conversation. I was young too. At this time, I was like 28. So Abby said, I'm glad that you called me and I understand. What else you got? Just like that. And just like that, I was released. After I had that, that was the first difficult conversation that I had that I was nervous. I'm not going to lie. I was very nervous calling Abby, but I was determined too. But after that, I was like, oh, this is easier than I thought. It's like a muscle. When you start having difficult conversations and start running from them, you begin to develop a muscle. The muscle of confidence that you have the ability to articulate how you feel without making another person feel offended and or hurt. The more you do that, the stronger that muscle grows, the better your vocabulary becomes, and the easier it is not to run from them. That muscle never develops until you work it out. So, I ain't even gonna hold you, but I know you got a difficult conversation to have that need to be made in 2022 because we all have them. This is a skill that we will always need to develop. It is ever evolving. So I want to end our session by saying this. Remember, there are 6 conversations happening in two persons, individuals' heads. Their identity, their emotions, and what happened. If you can keep that in mind when conflict arises, and always come from the lens of what can I learn about the individual that will help us have a healthy conflict. Conflict is not a bad thing. Healthy conflict can create really strong intimacy and trust